Hey guys, this is the probably final video about the research paper itself. And this is the one where I'm going to kind of talk about some of the formatting things. And in a lot of ways, it's the least important part of it to me. As I mentioned in the last video, I'm not planning on taking off points for the format as long as it looks like you made an honest effort to do things the right way or to do things consistently. You should score well on the rubric. That's usually how it's worded no matter what, but especially under the circumstances, you're going to have a lot of grace as far as that is concerned. But I will get into a little bit of the nitty gritty here just because, again, it's something that is probably a little foreign to some of us. So I just want to kind of go over some of the basics. So just a couple things to start out. You've got your MLA heading, which hopefully you're pretty familiar with by now. But just to be clear, it should be part of the paper itself. So not up here in the actual header of your document. Some people stick it up there, and that makes sense. It's the heading, header. But as far as the format is concerned, it's actually part of the paper itself. And so it goes right here. And just like the rest of your paper, it should be double spaced. And for those of you who have struggled with the double spacing before or forgotten, just make sure you highlight whatever it is needs to be double spaced. And I did Control A to select all because in this case, every part of your paper, including the heading and the works cited page, should be double spaced. So you can go to the format menu and go to it that way. But this little here, this little icon here where it's got the lines and it's got the arrows is where you go to, and you just want to make sure that you're on double for double spacing, and that'll do it for you. As far as, again, other frequent mistakes that come up, the title of your paper should be centered. But that's it. There doesn't need to be anything else special about the title. It doesn't need to be in a larger font. So the font size for the whole paper is 12. Sometimes you might have heard that it needs to be Times New Roman, and Times New Roman is fine. But according to MLA, it just needs to be a standard font. So, we don't want things like this cursive looking ones here or Comic Sans or anything decorative like that. But anything that is just standard normal font like Arial, which I have here, or Times New Roman, or what's the other one? Courier, I think. Just anything that's just a normal, regular looking font is fine. Sorry, lost train of thought. Okay, so size 12, you don't need it to be bigger. You don't need it to be underlined, bold, anything like that. It's just centered right there. Make sure, I don't know why, but sometimes people forget, when you get to the actual body of your paragraph, that you go back to what's called left alignment, to where most of your lines are lined up with this 1-inch margin here on the side of the page. And I'm sure most of y'all know this already, but for your paragraph to indent at the beginning of each paragraph, the fastest way to do it is to hit the tab key. I know there are some ways that you can automatically set it to indent the first line of each paragraph and all that. And if you want to do that, fine, but tab key, just don't do like the hitting the space bar 5 times. This isn't a typewriter. You don't need to do that. Okay. So like I said, the only thing in the paper that should be centered are your titles. Everything else is left aligned. I think that's it for the basic formatting. I mentioned in the previous video that when you have your parenthetical citations, these little guys here that are telling us what source your information came from, what book, what article, what documentary, whatever it is, that's part of the sentence. So it goes before the period, because again, it's part of that sentence. let's see. Now I want to show you guys the Works Cited page. And the Works Cited page is its own page. For longer things, it might actually be multiple pages. For all of you, you're probably going to be able to fit it all on one page. But so the shortcut to make sure that it's on a page of your own, you can do it the long way, where you go to Insert and then you go to Break and you choose Page Break, or the fast version is you hit Control Enter, and that gives you a brand new page. That even if you keep writing here, or even if you take some lines out, it will stay on its own page and stay at the top of that page. So you won't have anything weird happen where you've got all these extra lines and it starts in the middle of the page, or it starts at the bottom of your last page, or something like that. So you'll use a page break, and then just like the title of the paper itself, Works Cited is your title for this page, and it should be centered. And please note how it is spelled: cited, C-I-T-E-D. So it's not cited like you saw something out on the horizon. It's cited because it's related to citation, where you're telling us that these are the works that I got my information from, and I cited them all in my paper. I don't expect, since the number of sources I required is on the small side, just 3, this is going to be an issue, but I'll just put it out there so it doesn't throw anybody off. If you did not use information from that book or that article in your paper, it doesn't go on the Works Cited page. So back in the day, I learned when I was, well, even younger than y'all, a bibliography. And we've talked about bibliographies before. Bibliographies are still a thing. But bibliography basically just means it's a list of books. And so a trick that a lot of people would use would be to throw all kinds of titles of books or articles or whatever on there. But again, if you are not using or citing information from that book or from that article in your paper, it is not a work that you've cited. Like, that's just the definition. So don't feel like you're going to impress anybody by putting a whole bunch of examples on here that you didn't actually use in your paper. You might have read an article and then decided that either you changed your mind about the direction that you were going, or maybe it really kind of repeated some of the information from a different source, or who knows. So I believe that some of you may have read more than you actually cited in your paper, but you don't need to include it here. And I do apologize. my sample here actually does have works that aren't in my paper, and vice versa. At one point, I think I had done a version that had these actual books, like the Hunger Games, and like, which I don't think it's the Fellowship of the Ring, but whichever one of those Lord of the Rings books that quote came from. I have a different Works Cited page here because this uses a lot more articles instead of books to show you guys what these types of citations would look like. So I do have down here a book citation, so you can see how those look. And just like with the in-text citations, Purdue OWL is an incredible resource for how these things should look. Now, I will tell you, if you have been getting your information from Gale or the other library databases, you really don't even need to worry very much about Purdue OWL or any other MLA guide at all, because it will give you a properly formatted LA citation automatically for everything in there. So I'm going to show you really quick. I say quick, but this might take a little while since I didn't have it pulled up. Let's see how this goes. Come on. Friendly reminder, if you're going into Gale, the password is tigers, all lowercase. So let's look up something about COVID-19 because, you know, we've done enough about the Holocaust. And let's find an academic journal. Okay, so we'll pretend that this is a source that we're using for our paper. And right up here at the top, where it has little quotation marks and it says cite, this will give you the MLA formatted sites, or the list entry for your works cited page right there. So I can just copy that and go back over here. And this is a tiny little detail. I don't want you guys stressing about this, but one thing that a lot of people do miss when they're doing the works cited page is your entries should be alphabetical. So again, normally they're going to be by the author's last name, but in some cases, you'll have an article like this one or this encyclopedia article that don't provide an author's name. So whatever the first thing is, whether it's the title of the article or the author's last name, that should be where it goes there. Again, for short papers like yours, it's really not a big deal. If there's only 3 sources, I can find them pretty quickly. But again, going back to this book here, because the same style guides that you use for these, you know, what I'm going to call little baby papers, these first time or I mean, not practice, but you know, still one of the first times that you're doing it, are the same guidelines that are used for books. And so again, this particular book here has, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7, if I counted that correctly, 7 pages of references in there. So if I was looking for something and they weren't in order, it would be really frustrating and stressful. So obviously, as you can see here, the formatting isn't perfect. So what I always suggest is that you paste everything and then you go through and you just clean up the formatting once. So again, it's not something I'm going to be getting out the red pen and taking off points over. But if you want to make sure you do it the right way, like I said, it's easier to do it one time instead of to do it 3 or 4 or 5 times. So let me see really quick if there's anything else that I wanted to talk about before I give you the real, so if you might have seen it in the Purdue OWL page, but there are websites, like they use Citation Machine. There's another one called EasyBib, where if you did find an article from someplace other than the library database, it can help you create the citation for that. So again, Purdue OWL will tell you all the different things that you need for it, and you can create it on your own. But sometimes that can be a little overwhelming. So these citation websites or generators can be very helpful. So once you have it on there, I'm going to show you really quick how to do what's called the hanging indentation here. This is probably the only time where you would use the hanging indentation. I can't think of any other any other place I've used them other than for works cited page. But basically the way to think about it is it's the opposite of how you normally make your paragraphs. Normally, like we saw up here, the majority of your paragraph is lined up with the margin of the paper, and you just indent the first line. And the hanging indentation is the opposite, where the first line is flush with that 1-inch margin, and then the rest of it is indented 1/2 inch. And again, it's something that is here for the ease of finding different things. Because again, some of these citations can go on to multiple lines. So if you have this type of format, it's a lot easier to see where one citation ends and the next begins, or one entry ends and the next begins. So what you do, and here, let me show you one that's not already. Boo. Sorry, this is a bunch of gobbledygook. I just want to show you what it looks like, but it needs to be more than one line or you're not going to be able to see. Okay, there is garbage. So you're going to just highlight that line. And what you're going to do here, and if you're in Microsoft Word's a little bit more powerful than Google Docs. I'm pretty sure last time I checked, Google Docs didn't have, let's see, does it have hanging indentation? Yeah, I still don't see hanging indentation. You can still do it. It just doesn't have an automatic setting for it. So what you're going to do is drag the little arrow down here that says left indent when I'm hovering over it down to the 1/2 inch mark. And then this little rectangle that says left indent when, no, wait, hang on. That says first line indent. There we go. Take that, click that, and drag it back to your main margin. Oh my goodness. Okay, try that again. Oh, okay. You get the idea. It's not going to be the right number, but okay, so touchpad is not my friend. Okay, so now you see how the hanging indentation can be done. And just like I was saying with the formatting here, I would strongly recommend, if you are needing to do that, that you do it one time instead of needing to do it for every single entry. So obviously these ones already were formatted like that, but if you're copying and pasting 3, this one that I copied from Gale did it automatically, but I don't know if you're using Citation Machine, if it'll have the indentation formatted like that or not. So like I said, I don't want you stressing about it. This isn't the most important part of your paper by any means. But if you are trying to get the little things right, then that is one more little thing that you know how to do now. I'm going to make this garbage go away. And thank you guys. Stay safe. Let me know if you have any questions.